The film Imprint came about because I had an idea, and then the transition network in Sweden had an idea also, and it turned out it was the same idea. So I was obviously I'm running this Campfire Stories, and I make all these different little films about like solutions focused films, and films that focus on the root cause of the troubles of our times and not the symptoms. And I had this almost vision of me like traveling around Sweden on trains and buses and automobiles and bikes and whatnot to find little um, little samples of what works. Every film that's about this topic of how can we do things better, and stuff is not going so good for humanity right now and for the rest of the planet. Every such documentary begins with a collage of stuff going, the iceberg melting and the, spewing out of oil and gas and stuff like that. I didn't want to make that film. I had this clear idea of traveling around, finding stuff that worked, finding little projects, little ideas. Well, they didn't have to be little, but they also didn't have to be big. And then I got a phone call from a member of the Transition Network who said, "We've been having this idea of traveling around Sweden, finding these little projects and ideas and stuff that really works." And it was just amazing sometimes you feel like stuff can actually be meant to be, and this was one of those moments. And so we formed an editorial group consisting of 6 people, myself included, who had monthly meetings and sat down to try to figure out how can we spread, like what ideas do we have, how can we spread them geographically, age-wise, and in different ways so that they would have different tonalities. And just the idea was that all of these projects should be what's that word? Inspiring, and they should be of a scale where somebody else might say, "Oh, I want to do that." That was the scale of everything. Like, not how can we raise $10 million to build a carbon sucking machine? Not those ideas, but what can I do? What can my family do? What can we do here in my little community or my village or my part of the town? And we tried really hard to make it so that it would be consist of stuff in the countryside and in the city. And I think maybe we failed a little bit because there ended up being a lot of stuff in the countryside. But we really tried hard to not make it be all about growing vegetables and stuff like that. So that's the film. Some of the people in the audience may have seen it. It's been already out at the Campfire Stories website. And it's been making the rounds of the film festivals. Actually, I don't know if you see the beautiful plaque back here. It's an award for most inspirational film at the Frome International Film Festival. So it's been already making some impacts in the world, and now we're hoping that it'll continue to make an impact. And I'm actually secretly, but not so secretly, hoping that this film will inspire somebody else to make another such film. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the film that's called Demain, or Tomorrow, which also was a solutions-focused film about what can we do, what are people already doing. And I'm sure there's a handful of other ones, but I don't see a ton of that type of film, and I would like to see at least one more. And so towards the end of this hour, which we're already late now, we'll see, we may run a few minutes behind, but towards the end of this session, I'll be talking to Rob Hopkins, asking him about what do you think would be cool ideas to include in a version 2.0 of this film. So I'm hoping that it reaches another team of filmmakers to take this. What's that called when you run and you pass on a baton? Relay filmmaking race. I think that's good as an introduction. I have 6 guests with me on the call. And I'd like to, so there are people from the film. Some of you who have not already seen the film will now see these people for the first time. But if you've seen the film, you'll recognize these people and projects that they represent from the film. And I'd like to begin by asking if Johan Örlander is on the call and see if we can. There he is.
Yes, I hear you. I'm here.
And I was going to begin by asking what's happened since the last time I saw you, but from the looks of it, nothing has happened. It seems like you're in the same place where I found you a few years ago filming.
Yeah, just a little bit ways from there, but I'm still in the forest doing the courses. Yeah, very similar.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So, would you mind, just to open up, just for people who may not have seen the film, just briefly introduce yourself and talk just briefly about what you did in the film and what you're doing right now?
Yes. So my name is Johan, and for the last 20 years, I've been learning to live like our ancestors, basically, learning about the native life way. I've been to North America, learning, been at the wilderness school in North America, learning these skills that the natives there used, and then brought what I learned there back to Europe, and been doing a lot of like living in the forest in different groups and living in different collectives, and then running a lot of different kind of courses from like just a few hours up to a month or 2 months sometimes in a row, being out with people and practicing this way of living. It's living in nature. We call it nature life, what we're doing.
And is that where you are right now? Like, can your camera give a little bit of a scenery?
Yes. So I'm sitting up on this little hill here next to a camp. I'm out with a group of, it's called Nature Life with Children. So we have a group with 15 adults and 15 kids of varying ages. The youngest is 1.5 and the oldest kid is 14. And then a bunch of adults. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I took a little break. The others are cooking dinner around the fire. Yeah.
It's so cool. It's so wonderful that you're in the pretty much in a very similar spot to where I found you the last time when we sat down to make the interview. Is it the exact same spot?
No,
Uvberget?
no, it's not on Uberg. It's
Okay.
another little hill, but not so far away from there. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we use this different camp spot in this area. We practice this nomadic lifestyle, so we go to different spots, not to wear them down too much. You know, we need to have firewood, and then there are different groups going to using the same camp spots. So we have about 10, 15 camp spots in this area that we alternate in between.
And I want to ask you, so this will be actually a pretty similar question to the one I asked you in the film, but I think it could be interesting to hear if the response has shifted somehow. Basically, I'm curious, with these things that you teach, wilderness skills, or maybe you have a better word, you can correct me. Why would like the modern person heading into the the present and the future of whatever the crises hitting us, why are these skills important, do you think, that you're teaching?
Well, I think it's really important to have the connection with nature, first of all, just living out in nature and having direct connection. You know, we get the water directly from the lake. We go fishing, we gather plants, we get the firewood, we get a lot, if not everything. Some courses we try to get everything. We even make our own clothes from hides and things like that. So just learn how can you actually get what you need directly from nature. And having these skills in that relationship, it also, you care a whole lot more about something that you realize that you're so directly dependent on. We're so disconnected in our culture. We buy everything in a store, most of us, or most in our culture. And here you see the direct connection. Here when the forest companies come in and they cut down a lot of forests, like half of the forests in this area have disappeared since I moved to this area 20 years ago. And you see like all of this disappearing that you're dependent on. So you have this direct connection. And then it's also about living in a circle, living in a group of people and taking care of each other in a direct way. You can't go to the store. You have this amount of food, you have this fish, and you need to see who needs what, who needs most in the group, and living together. Like, we lived for 99% of our time as humans on this planet. And I think we have a lot to learn from our from our ancestors of living in balance. Like, how can you do that? We don't need so much stuff in this culture. You know, we replace relationship with each other and nature with all this stuff and all these things that we don't really need. I think we need each other. You know, we need a nature that can give us what we need. We need to give back to nature, and that's, you know, the circle way of living. And when we're disconnected from that, then I think we feel an emptiness inside, and then we try to fill that with other things. And that's a big part of the problem, that you know, we're, you know, destroying nature on our planet that we depend on.
Well, I'd like to hear so much more about this, but unfortunately, with the timing of this hour, which, like I said, I think we're running behind, but that's fine. I think I'm going to say thank you so much, and anyone who wants to hear more can watch the film, obviously, but also if they're located in Sweden, they can look up Naturliv, right?
Yes.
And you can, I don't know if you're on a device where you can put something in the chat, but if you have a link, otherwise I'll provide the link after the call so that people can find you and sign up for your courses.
Yes, I can post it in the chat.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Johan. Good luck with the kids.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. My pleasure. Yeah.
Next up is Pella, but I want to, before we move on to Pella, just briefly mention that obviously I emailed everybody in the film, so the people that you see are not like I've selected them. These are the people who had time in their schedule to be able to join, and the rest weren't able to join. It's a pretty big cast of characters that are in the film that you'll see if you go and watch the film. There's one of them I wanted to just pass on a bit of news, which is Melda. I don't know, for the people who watched the film already, there's a young woman who's part of the Fridays for Future movement, and she was the second person to be part of what became the Fridays for Future movement. That means, so Greta Thunberg sat down to make a one-person strike, and there was one person that came and said, this is a good idea, I'm going to give her backup. And that was Melda. And she's in the film. And she's studying to be a nurse. And she is planning to join, what is that called? Médecins Sans Frontières? The Doctors Without Borders. So she's taking her activism in a slightly different direction, which I thought was so beautiful. And I just wanted to relay that to you. And with that, Pella Thiel, who in the film you are... Hi, Pella.
Hey.
In the film you're representing End Ecocide, but you've told me in the pre-meeting that there's something else on your mind that you want to share about. Please tell us what's going on in your life since the film was made.
Yeah, thank you, Mattias, and what a beautiful space you're creating for us here to celebrate this beautiful film. I think I was speaking a lot in the film about this disconnect. I mean, building on what Johan said, the disconnect on a structural level in our society is based on this root cause that I see as us viewing nature and the more than human beings as objects and just resources for us. And like shifting that idea with another idea, which is that we have rights, and those rights can be acknowledged in law, and actually the rights of all beings can be acknowledged in a similar way. And that's kind of a way of like an acupuncture point in our society. And so the care and the connection that Johan spoke about, I think that we need that on a structural level. We need to institutionalize that and to demand that of our society. And so that it has taken the shape for me, it has kind of manifested as an embassy of the Baltic Sea. So the Baltic Sea obviously is a sea in deep trouble. It's often said that it's one of the most polluted water bodies in the world, and the problems of the sea is so old and so well known and so recognized by research and by all kinds of various ways of trying to fix them, but we just can't do it in this system. And to me, that is because we see the sea and the fish and everything as just resources for us. So trying to get rights of nature acknowledged in law in this context in the Nordic countries is sort of, that will probably take some time. So I decided that we just skip that step and move directly into representation. So we are playing this game that actually the more than human beings in the whole watershed, in the whole Baltic watershed, they can have a voice and can be listened to, and that can be, we can work on that through an embassy.
And how can you say something? So that sounds almost fantastical, but on a practical level, how does that work?
I have no idea yet. We call this embassy, also building on what Johan said about the need for care. I mean, there's actually no way around that. We have to care more, and we have to show that we care. So we call the embassy a laboratory of care, and we think that it will take many, many shapes. So last Friday, Sweden's 31st national park was inaugurated, and the first marine national park in the Baltic Sea. And so what we did was to ask artists to create masks to embody, to show this idea that we can actually embody other beings and give them a voice and speak from their perspective. And humans have always done this. And it's such an interesting way of going about, I think, because so we have this problem that more than human beings, they are not legal persons, but they are legal objects that can be owned and sold and so forth. But actually the word and that idea of nature as object is so old. It's sort of in the Roman law that it forms the basis of the legal systems in Western societies. All that idea was already there. But the idea, the word, the concept, a person, comes from the masks that were used in the theaters in ancient Rome. So we kind of take that concept and use it as a trickster to challenge the idea of nature as object.
Nice. I like
that's
the
just one way. I mean, we hope that it will take so many forms, but there's a thing that I don't have to have the answers also.
Yeah. If people want to learn more, if you have a link or something, if you would put that in the chat, then people can donate money or make a mask or show up or whatever is the preferred method of being there for the Baltic Sea and its embassy.
Absolutely. Thank you, and be welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Pella. Let's see if Andy Frank is on the call, and it looks like I see his video. He's running around, running. There he is. Mr. Oops. Andy is the person in the film. For those of you who have seen the film, he's the person organizing street festivals in otherwise pretty abandoned suburbs to Stockholm, where wasn't that much going on. And then Andy came around with an idea of bringing his Oregonian powers to the streets of Stockholm.
My otherworldly.
How are you doing, Andy?
Good, thank you. Great.
I'm
just trying to get this situated here.
That's all right. You get yourself situated.
I'm in a room with lots of clutter. So can you see all the clutter?
We can see everything.
Okay, here. Okay.
Well, I wanted to ask you. That's good. Very professional.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about. So there's a lot of talk about AI and what's happening going forward, and that human labors are going to be reduced as far as a lot of stuff that we've been doing in our workplaces. But a lot of the stuff that's human-to-human connection stuff seems to be like that's what makes us human. And I feel like that's where you come into the film and to the world with the human-to-human connection. Would you say something about what you're like, what's your report from the streets of these festivals and the things that you're bringing together? And how do you see your role in that?
Well, I just see, I mean, it's grown so much. I don't know if it was 4 years ago you did the filming or, yeah. It's so important, just the local connection and practicing that. And also that we're having a space in the areas, in these different centrums where we can have music and art and just a variety of happenings, and just for people to get together and just practice connecting. I think it's more revelatory than ever, just the connections in Humansville.
And what do you see? Because you describe in the film that you moved into this particular area and it was kind of dead, like not much going on. What have you been able to do with your magic in those areas?
Well, we started 10 years ago. One of the markets we're celebrating 10 years in Bondhagen, where I live. So it's going to be the 10th year. And I mean, just creating an ongoing ritual is so important for each area, and for people to feel more of a connection to the hood, the neighborhoods, and the areas that they live in. It's very, very important. So we've done like 6 or 7 different areas around Stockholm, and and it's just establishing a tradition, encouraging people to get involved, having folks of all ages. And, I live in an area that's really diverse for people from many, many different countries, and really just trying to reflect that with our markets. And it's just fun. It's just joyous, where people can be at ease. There's always free stuff for kids. We always have music. There's art. There's, I mean, each market is a little bit different, but it's just very, very important. And I'm blessed enough that I mean, I'm going to be 65 Wednesday. I'm pretty much retired, and we live simply enough where I can just put my energies into this, and that we're able to get sponsors and it's just what I want. Well, in this period of my existence here in the earthly realm, this is what I want to be putting my energies into. Just contributing to building local community. It's very satisfying and it just feels very essential. And I'm hearing all the time from people what it means to them as I meet them. And it's just, it's very satisfying, and also reminding people that we're holding space, but they're just as essential part of it. It's really important for people to realize that we're co-creating these together, that they have a engaged, active part too. So it's really important. And and then also, I guess for Renato and I, who's my kind of co-conspirator, that we want to kind of use this template to bring into other areas, maybe get some young people involved, provide this template for them to start a market in whatever areas they live in, and we can mentor them. And that's kind of the direction that we're kind of wanting to head in. And there's some possibility for that next year. And just keep and also keep the markets, I mean, all the places where we're having markets, we've pretty much established a tradition for at least 4 years. So it's fantastic. And it's just a buzz. And it's I feel very,
I've been to a couple of them.
Yeah, I feel very blessed to do what I do, and I meet so many cool people, such cool characters, and we really want to, and people really feel that they can be themselves, and and it's nice. We want to hold a safe space where people can just feel at ease, just to hang out. We want, like I say, I want the big thing to be that it's no big thing. And then we're creating that, and it's very satisfying, and it's very simple, and people are starting to invite other people in. We want to support local organizations that are kind of engaged in community building, and also to be one-stop shopping for healthy community, to know where the different resources are, because when the proverbial feces hits the fan, you're going to need to know the people around you, and we need to practice now. So this is good evolutionary practice, in Humansville.
I feel like one of those radio hosts where it's like, okay, I get the prompt where that's 5 minutes. That's now 6 minutes.
Oh, is it 6 minutes?
I wanted to ask you more stuff,
I get carried away. I get carried away.
No,
Soon
don't
I'm
worry.
going to be carried away. They're going to carry me away.
Don't worry about it. I wanted to keep. I have so many more questions for each of you, but this
and thanks for everything you've done,
smorgasbord,
Mattias.
if you will, a sample of
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Andy, and please, if there's a link for people to find out more.
Oh yeah, I forgot to. I'll send it to you. Okay, the Instagram and absolutely. And thanks for everything you've done.
On if they search for, what is it called to search for?
It's called, well, the Instagram is probably, or the Facebook, it's called Southside 19 Markets, but I'll send you that. You have the link. I think you have the link, but I'll send it to you.
I have the link. I'm talking about the people who are the audience here, that they get.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that on Zoom. I'm not really sure how to send. I'm sorry.
We'll figure it out. Okay. Thank you so much, Andy. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you're doing, and thanks everybody else for all the awesomeness that you're contributing to out in the world. We got stuff. There's no choice.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's see if Anton is on the phone call.
Hello.
Hey, Anton.
Hey.
So briefly, for people who may not have seen the film, or who may have seen the film, Anton is the bicycling guitar madman who is also part of the food gathering and distributing of food. Maybe it's better that you introduce yourself, and then I'll ask a question. How's that?
Yeah, why not? I think you do a good job. But yes, at the time I was living in Malmö. I am in Malmö right now. I still have like not one leg, but I'm still in Malmö quite a lot. But we've moved to the countryside since then. Still dumpster diving, taking advantage and saving the food. But at the time we did it with an organization, and I did it with an organization which is called Folkets Skafferi here in Malmö. And I'm not with them right now, but they're still doing fine, I think. They're doing a great job. The queue for people who want food is bigger than ever, and which is a sad symptom, of course. But
so just briefly for anybody who don't know, they made connections with supermarkets, various supermarkets, who had X amount of food that they had to throw away for whatever reasons, and then they collected before it got thrown away and distributed it to people who were in need.
Yes, yeah.
But then you told me that as you've moved away from Malmö, your sort of transitioning movement has taken on a new life. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life lately.
Yeah, but it's so nice to everything's connected, and I feel like the power of inspiration, being in a loop of transitioners, which I've been fortunate to be, and the movie was so much part of that, I guess, like just getting inspiration from on a daily basis or quite often. I think the intention, if you just open to it, it will lead you to where you meant to be or where you thrive. And so we just happened to buy a house in the countryside and be more of like a traditional transitioner in the northern part of Skåne, and living in a collective with we have 4 people, 1 cat and ducks, and a tiny house where one person comes to work on the tiny house, and it's been great. It's been very nice to take that step and like experiencing everything, the water, electricity cuts, and the water, the wells run out, and all the things that is more down to earth, and you get to know like the wilderness, Naturliv, like it's at least one step closer to our basic needs, which is also something that I also always talk to with my students, because I'm a teacher, and I always bring back to our basic needs. I like to take that as in a society, when we talk about society, to like take it down to the basics.
And I wanted to ask you briefly also, because you play a song in the film. We sort of turned one little portion of the film into a quasi music video, and the song is called Tom Bombadil, and anybody who's a Lord of the Rings fan out there knows what that means. And the song is available on where. So tell us where the song is available, and also how the musician Anton is doing, and where.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. It's on the infamous Spotify, I guess, and the YouTube. So the big companies. Yeah, the musician is. I've had a kind of a low phase. Like Utekatt is my name when I haven't done that much with that, but the question is like I've been having more fun with music lately, and that's what's important, just jamming and stuff like that. And now I'm also taking a course in music production to be able to make it a little bit faster from an idea onto the record, because that's the that from idea to get it out there should be faster. Then it will help me, I think, and everyone who wants to hear me, especially. Yeah, so I'm doing fine with music.
So put, if you would, a link to where people can listen to your music when this call is done. Maybe it's a good time to crank up some Utekatt tunes. There's some really good ones. I was like, I loved Tom Bombadil, but there were other ones that I was considering too, like which one should we choose for the film? So that's a good tip for post-call blues. Thank you so much for being on the call, Anton.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are moving on, and only slightly behind schedule, as we call on Dougald Hine, the famous shoemaker. How are you doing, Dougald?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So you are, I trust, in your shoe shop right now?
I am sitting in the shoe shop. There are not very many shoes. There are a lot of books here. But yeah.
Lovely. Maybe I'd love for you to introduce yourself with your own words and tell people why I keep referring to shoe shop. Maybe mix that in there. But then also, at the time of the making of the film, you were working on a book, but it was not yet out. And now it is out. As a matter of fact, I see it there behind you, I think. And if you would talk a little bit about that book, which is called At Work in the Ruins, and what the story or the idea behind that book and for that book is.
Sure. Well, I was remembering when you came to interview me for the film, it was literally the week after I'd finished writing the first draft of At Work in the Ruins. And it was one of those times when you sit down to talk to somebody and if the words that I needed were on the tip of my tongue. So I'm really happy that you happened to come just at that moment in time, which is over 3 years ago now. And anyone who's seen the film, if you pay attention, you might have noticed it's looking pretty kind of cluttered and chaotic in the background in the shoe shop. So about 5 years ago this autumn, Anna, my other half, and I, and our son Alfie found this old shoe shop in this small place called Östervåla. It's, I never know whether to call it a little town or a big village. It's got a population of about 1,800, and it's got a few thousand more people who live in smaller villages around who travel in and out of here. It's about an hour by bus north from Uppsala. And until 2015, this had literally been the shoe shop for the village for 3 generations of the same family since it was built. And we had been looking for a place to call home because for a number of years, Anna and I had been gradually growing this project, a school called home. And we often say it's a gathering place and a learning community for those who are drawn to the work of regrowing a living culture. And the book that I was just finishing writing at the point where you came and visited us, when we were still very much in the early days of making ourselves at home here and turning the shoe shop into a kind of a gathering space for that work. That book was also looking back over the years since I had been involved in starting a thing called the Dark Mountain Project, which Paul Kingsnorth and I started back in 2009, which carries on today in the hands of some wonderful people, some of whom I've seen on this call, Charlotte Ducan and Johnny, and I think there might be 1 or 2 other Dark Mountain Friends here. But basically, for a long time, my work had involved walking into rooms where people were talking about climate change and trying to sort of draw attention to the bits that often go missing from those conversations. And so that book, At Work in the Ruins, was really sort of putting together what I'd learned from those years and reflecting on how I'd begun to see some of that differently by the beginning of this decade, I suppose.
And then rumor has it that you're working on another book as we speak. Is that true?
It is, yeah. There is a book in progress. And where I'm trying to go now is, on the one hand, deeper into the roots of the question, how did we find ourselves in this trouble? Because that's one of the things I said in At Work in the Ruins is, as long as we frame the story of climate change inside the science, which is how it's normally talked about for understandable reasons, there are certain questions that we can't really ask, let alone answer. And my example of that is, how did we find ourselves in this trouble? Is it the result of a piece of bad luck with the atmospheric chemistry, that these carbon emissions turned out to be messing up the global climate system? Or is it a consequence of a way of approaching the world, a way of seeing and treating everything and everyone that would always have brought us to such a pass, even if the atmospheric chemistry had been different, or even if the climate scientists turned out to have got their sums wrong? And so in the new book, what I'm talking about is the deep cultural roots of the trouble we're in, that it's not just a crisis of nature, it's a crisis of culture, that we're not just facing ecological breakdown, but cultural breakdown. And that actually, whereas we're often encouraged to see culture as a sort of soft surface layer over harder social, economic, material realities, it's not like that. For the kind of creatures that we are, you can't get deeper than culture. You can't get back behind culture. And you can't live without culture. But in a sense, modern societies have been trying to live beyond the atmosphere of culture, which is as much of a challenge as trying to live beyond Earth's atmosphere for creatures like us. And that's what turns us into the ones who devour the world. That's how we end up, consuming the world while still feeling empty, drowning in stuff, but starved of meaning. And so on the one hand, I'm trying to go deeper into telling that story. And on the other hand, going, well, okay, so once that story's landed with you, once your hunch is that fits where we are and how we got here, what's worth doing? Because we can't just rewind the clock. Even if you retrace your steps, that doesn't take you back in time. So that's actually where, the stuff that Andy's doing is really close to my heart. It reminds me of the work that I was doing when I lived in London with space makers, and some of those stories start to come into this book, because it's all about how do we recognize our helplessness, our cluelessness, not as something we ought to feel guilty about, and not as something we can't do anything about, but as a kind of humbling invitation to start rebuilding the muscles we haven't been using. The muscles of culture, the ways in which humans come together and do things when we're not doing them because we've been paid to, or because we've been told to, which are the twin logics that have governed modern societies. But we come together for more interesting, more beautiful, more meaningful reasons than that, which is how humans made life work when we were, according to modern measures, far poorer than any of us on this call are today. So how do we start that again? How do we practice it? How do we build up the muscles of that? Because we're going to need them when the systems that are already visibly falling apart just aren't there anymore. And it's going to be late in the day to start practicing when we get to that point. So that's why it's so important that people like Andy and lots of the other people on this call are finding ways, light, playful, beautiful ways to start practicing, to start rebuilding those muscles of community.
Wow, that's beautiful. There's so much more there, and again, this smorgasbord idea seemed good at the time, and maybe I'm slightly regretting it now, but that it is what it is. Dougald, would you also, if there's a link for people to find out more, would you put it in the chat so that people can dive into, maybe somebody's asking themselves, what is a school called home? Or where do I pick up a copy of At Work in the Ruins? Stuff like that.
I'll stick that in the chat.
Thank you so much for being here, Dougald. Let's see. We have one more interviewee, hopefully, here, and after that, we're going to acquaint ourselves a little bit with the founder of the Transition Network, Rob Hopkins. But before we do that, let me invite Carolina Castillo, who's joining
Hi.
us.
Do
Who's
you hear
joining us
me?
from Paraguay. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
But
Hello to everyone.
But when I saw you last and we made a film together, you were in this small town called Örlander.
Yes.
So before we talk about Paraguay, just for the people who saw the film and maybe they're wondering how is the store doing, that the co-op store that you helped run, would you say something about Örlander and the culture house and the store and the vibe that you left behind there?
It's now community owned village, the village shop and the cultural house, and it's working really great. It's working. We have 2 boards. I still see myself part of that, though I am on the other around the world from that place in Örlander. But it's working fine. It's really great what we managed to do in such a small time, and people are coming and it's growing. People are interested in the model that we successfully built in Örlander. So that's great. We are excited about that.
And when we had the big interview for the film, there were obviously a lot of things that were cut out. You cannot put the whole thing. And I remember a thread that I thought was really interesting, but that did not make it into the film. But I think it's appropriate to talk about now, because you were comparing the cultural differences between South America and particularly Paraguay, which is one part of where you're from, with Sweden, which has a very different vibe altogether. Would you say something about the differences that you see, and what are maybe some things that people do better in Paraguay than what people are doing in Sweden, and perhaps vice versa, if I dare throw that in there?
Yeah. No, that's a tricky one because it's I think that in from the beginning you can see that of course the historical context of the countries are totally different. We have Sweden that haven't had Bellic particularly in any problems, political problems or larger problems with the neighbors and stuff like that. So we have a community that's that has a democratical culture, and in Paraguay we have had the largest military dictatorship in the history of Latin America, 35 years. So democracy is quite new here. It's like we are still trying to wake up the muscles, as Dougald said. So that's the main difference if you look at that from a historical perspective, political perspective. But I think there is a lot of more similarities that we maybe that I was surprised to find when I went back to Sweden after a period of time living in Paraguay. And it's a growing problem, I think, all over the planet. And it's the lack of rural, for instance, rural politics, the dissociation. You have more politics going towards big enterprises and not towards the people. So the growing necessity of people organizing themselves in order to actually break that and actually break the system, it's something that you see as a necessity in Paraguay, also in Sweden. Of course, in Paraguay, the main difference is because we have had that political situations, problems and repression, more in a more obvious way. People are more organized in a way in grassroots organizations. We are more used to take things by our own hands and going out and mobilize. but Sweden have had the history of the state taking care of everything. So people feel more disconnected to the political reality. And I see that those kind of exercises, those kind of projects that you have enlightened in your documentary are coming from the necessity of coming from the shortcuts of the need of social politics, climate politics, educational ones. And I find that very revolutionary to actually try to change locally what you can change in order to then make people having the hope that it's possible to change where you live and you locate, and that's politics. I mean, for me, that's a beautiful way of showing that it's possible to change this model, that it's not sustainable anymore. That is global, of course.
Yeah. Oh, I have follow-up questions, but again, I think we're already running so much behind. Maybe just briefly, if I may, what do you see in the very day-to-day actions in where you live now, of people interacting, and what is some of the stuff that we can learn from the way? I think you mentioned something in our interview a few years ago, that the interactions are different, just the day-to-day
Yeah,
interaction.
I think that this is a society that is much more solidaric because of the urgency also of the day-to-day. And that I have found it's difficult in Sweden. People are disconnected in a way, not so close to each other, and that also I think creates the alienation and solitude. That eventually, I always take this as an example. Sweden has a society that is really lonely. People are lonely, and loneliness is killing people. So there is a need to reach out to our neighbor, to the friends, to people we see on the street. And that's something that we have more naturally here. And I think that's a good way of taking care of problems in the day-to-day basis. And in Sweden, it's not. But there is actually research that shows that loneliness is killing almost like smoking a package of cigarettes per day. And in the packages we see the sign that smoking kills, but where do we see the signs that solitude and loneliness kills? So that's a problem, I think, that we have to solve the human part of the problem before we can even think about solving the ecological part, because it's so connected, so we can't do one thing without the other, and it's a community effort, of course.
Thank you so much, Carolina. It's so lovely to speak to you again.
Thank you.
And I still use that recipe that you taught me. I can't remember the name of the dish, but I still use it. It's still a hit over here.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for having me, and thank you for being able to share with all those wonderful people as well.
Lovely. Okay, we're behind, but who cares? This is not network television. So we are now at the phase where I would like to introduce Rob Hopkins. However, he was not available on this particular day and hour, as he is in Portugal surfing with his son, which I thought was a good excuse. So I accepted that. But we did make an interview together. And so that interview is actually 15 minutes long, just so you know. But it's worth every minute, so try to stay on if you can. It's really gold. And then afterwards I will come back on and say a few closing remarks, and at that point we'll be 10-15 minutes late. So if that's fine with you, stick around. Otherwise this thing will be recorded and will hit YouTube near you in some point in the future. But right now, unless there's something I'm forgetting, which I'm hoping there isn't, I'd like to ask Julie producer extraordinaire to share the interview that I made a couple of days ago with Rob Hopkins, who is the founder of the Transition Network. Let's see if technology is on our side. So in the film Imprint, I travel around Sweden visiting all kinds of different projects. So Imprint, it's a collaboration with the Swedish Transition Network. And I visit projects that are directly tied to the Transition Network, and also just projects that we in the editorial group for the film thought were good transition projects. And so this film includes topics such as these: solutions to food waste, the importance of gathering, celebrating, and getting to know your neighbors, the importance of the work of poets and artists in troubled times, replanting forests, local food resilience, a grocery store that went from being boarded up to being locally co-owned, downscaling, simplifying, and tiny house living, survival skills, foraging, and what being in nature does with us, and local economies. But let's say a new film, perhaps in collaboration with the Transition Network somewhere in the world, were to be made. And let's say that new film's producers reached out to you as the founder of the Transition Network for inspiration of what projects they might visit to create that film. What are some of the things that you have, like transition projects that you've been a part of or that you've heard of, that you would suggest for such a film?
Yeah, great question. I would always send them to Liège in Belgium for the Ceinture Alimentaire Liégeoise project, which is where they are building a food belt around the city of Liège. It came from Liège en Transition in 2014. They raised 5 million euros of investment from the people of Liège to start 30 new cooperatives in the city. Now the municipality are very involved and have invested a few million euros. They've created a food logistics hub on the edge of the city. They produce thousands of school meals every day. It's spreading very quickly to other cities in Belgium. It's very, very inspiring. So I would always point people to that. I would say that also some of the most important things that transition groups do actually can take a long time, and it requires people who just keep showing up and who just keep doing the work. And so one of those here in Totnes, where I'm based, is the Transition Homes, which is building 39 affordable ecological homes for people in local housing need, because there's always, I think, a danger with transition that transition does loads of really cool stuff and builds, all the kind of projects that you've just mentioned are really important. But the danger is that they can potentially become one of the drivers of gentrification in that place. It becomes, oh wow, well, that's a really interesting, cool place. And it's one of the things I notice here in Totnes, that some of the estate agents who market houses that are for sale here, in the sales brochure for houses which the community have opposed, which are unecological, awful market housing, in their promotional material they say Totnes, home of the transition movement. So that's going to be 39 houses. They've just started construction after like 15 years of work or something. They're actually now being built. So I would say that because I think that's really important. And also here we have a big building in the center of town called the Mansion, which is like a center for lots of different local organizations and social enterprises and stuff, and that's in community ownership. And we run that building in community ownership as a community asset, and it's been a real success. So I think this idea of communities owning things is really important. I would maybe send them to Wellington, which is a town which is about an hour away from Totnes, still in the southwest. So Transition Town Wellington have an amazing project where they are creating food forests around the town, and they've just been working away for years, doing one and then doing another and then doing another and then doing another, and creating more and more interest and enthusiasm. And now the local council keep coming to them and saying, do you want this? Do you want this bit as well? Can you do something here? Can you do something here?
Mm.
So it's like we get so used to kind of feedback as being a negative thing, climate feedback loops, but this is a kind of a positive feedback loop.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know how many would you like?
I don't know, maybe one more?
Maybe one more. So um, I guess a story that like you said when you were making the film, there were stories that weren't explicitly transition, but were very much manifestations of that spirit. One of my favorite ones that I went to visit recently is in Marseille, in France, in the north of Marseille, which is many of your listeners will have been to Marseille, but probably not to North Marseille. North Marseille is a quite challenging part of the city. It's like 80 something percent immigrant population, very poor housing, not much employment, lots of undocumented migrants living there. And in this particular neighborhood in North Marseille, there was in 2014, the French government gave McDonald's money to open a McDonald's on a big roundabout in this part of Marseille because they thought it would create jobs. So they subsidized McDonald's to run this thing for like 6 years or something. And then, which I didn't know, the governments subsidized McDonald's to do that, but apparently they did. And then when COVID arrived, just before COVID arrived, McDonald's said to the French government, no, the French government said we're going to we've subsidized you for 5 years now. That's enough.
Mm.
And so McDonald's said, okay, well, we're going to close the restaurant then. I use the word restaurant very, very loosely. And so the McDonald's closed the restaurant, and the 72 people who worked there lost their jobs just before COVID arrived. And in this neighborhood, they said when I went there, they said people were much, much more in danger of dying from starvation than dying from COVID because there was just no food and there was no work and there was no support for anybody because so many people were undocumented. So there was a guy who had been the manager there who still had the keys in his pocket for the building.
Mm.
And so they opened the building and occupied the building and they turned it into a food bank and they distributed 1,000 food parcels every week to local people who needed food. And it was an incredible thing. And then after a year of doing that, the municipality bought them the building and they opened it as a project which is called Après M, so after McDonald's. And they run it as what they call a social fast food restaurant. And it's an amazing sort of catalyst for stuff in the local community and how they run it and how they source the food. And it's really an amazing story, which very much sees itself as being like inspired by the spirit of transition, even if they aren't necessarily formally a transition project.
That sounds like a film in itself.
It's totally a film in itself. I don't know why no one has made maybe in the French speaking film world somebody has made a film of it, but it's not a story that's that well known more widely. But it's so cool and it's very kind of Marseille and they like use the car park for concerts and it's an amazing, amazing thing. Just I guess one other one as well, which again is not formally a transition group. I guess thing that often you get in France is that there's like the transition movement, which is like formal transition things, but then in France the word transition is used very much more. What they call it the ecological transition is a more wide. So a lot of municipalities are very big on that, and one of those is a place about half an hour away from Nice, which is called Montsartou, which is a town of about 9,000 people. And they have a system there where all of the school meals that are served in the town are organic. And 80% of them are grown locally within Montsartou, and the municipality bought land to create a market garden there. And it's it's absolutely fascinating because this market garden is this beautiful place. The kids from the school come out there. They learn about the food. They also learn how to cook there. They have like an educational kitchen place where kids learn how to cook. And then in the school, all the produce is prepared fresh, and the kids are part of that too. They're able to do it so the French government gives €2 20 to to whoever is providing school meals per child per day, and they they do that at that cost because they produce 75% less food waste and serve 50% less meat. And but it's an amazing town. There's a man called Gilles Perrol there who is the guy in charge of the food transition in this place. And they uh what they did after they'd been doing this for about 5 years, they did some really interesting research which showed that since this change was made, people in the town now eat 30% less ultra processed food. I think it's 23% less meat. They eat more organic, more seasonal produce because the that shift came through the kids going home and bringing that culture home. For me, it's a really powerful taster of what happens when municipalities or governments move with audacity and purpose, that it does lead to all sorts of changes you don't expect. They also have a really interesting project there where the municipality mapped the whole town in terms of places where there could be community food gardens, and then went to all the people who lived around the 12 different places they identified and said, if you wanted to make a community food garden here, we would support with some funding and some training and so on and so on. And I think there's now 7 new food gardens in the city because they proactively took that initiative and provided that support. And every time I go there, it's so, so, so inspiring what they're doing.
Wow. I mean, let me just share one thing, which is that it's so inspiring to speak with you. And just listening to you now reminded me of the time when I went to see you in Totnes in your office. And
Yeah.
after that meeting, I'm a pretty glum, sort of, kind of pessimistic guy at times when it comes to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
After leaving that meeting with you, I was so uplifted. And this is the feeling I had. I thought, wow, I just met the next leader of the United Kingdom. It was like a thing. But then now I'm realizing that, okay, that was living in fantasy world, but that was just the feeling I had. Like, this is the kind of leadership that so Rob Hopkins for president or whatever, I guess prime minister is going to be my new
Yay.
my
I'll
new
print some
stance.
t-shirts.
Yeah.
I would also just add that actually, so that the book that I just published, which is called How to Fall in Love with the Future, has a lot of those stories in, and a lot of other stories as well. So I'm always kind of looking for those for those stories, and there's lots of them in there.
Sounds like your book could be made into a film.
Yeah, well, actually, there are some people who are making a film about some aspects of it. They're making not so much about the stories that are in the film. I think that would be a different film. Would be like, so it's actually really nice. Like the sort of when the book was published, it'd only been out for about a week, and I don't know quite how this had happened, but I did a book launch in Bristol. And there was a man there who said that he had somehow got hold of an early copy of the book from somewhere and had designed his summer holiday to visit all the places in the book. So he'd been to Utrecht to see the bicycle rush hour. He'd been to the Vauban to see the car-free neighborhoods. He was like, so I basically had a How to Fall in Love with the Future summer holiday and went to visit all these different places. He said it was so amazing. I came home so inspired, by visiting all the different places. The film that the guys are making is more about Rob Hopkins, the time traveler.
Right.
So it's a slightly more sort of fantastical kind of Sun Ra inspired, extraordinary thing. I don't know. It's quite early stage,
So
but I think something that
you're not only a future prime minister, you're also a science fiction actor.
exactly. Well, not an actor, no, because that's the story. We have actually built a time machine, so it's more like I'm a science reporter, I suppose, really. But I think but there's a chapter in the book which is about how we need to stop using the word impossible and replace it with the words not yet. That actually we get told all the time, oh, that's impossible, or that's impossible. It's like, no, it's not, because look, it's already happening over there. It's already happening over there. So I think, like a film that's about redefining impossible as not yet. And taking those key things, that politicians say, oh, well, there's no alternative to growth, and there's no alternative to big agriculture, and it's like, come and see, come with me. Mattias will take you to go and visit all these amazing things. Yeah, that would be amazing, I think.
All right. Thank you so much for being on this recorded message.
My pleasure and joy as always. Yes, and do send me a link to the film, and and good luck with everything that you do. It's so important that we have people telling these stories and doing it in the accessible and lovely way that you do. So yeah, thanks for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Rob. Excuse me. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. We are wrapping it up a little bit late. I want to take this opportunity to thank Julie Parker, who has been running the show. She's invisible, but she's making sure that everything is working and running smoothly. So thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much to the panel, everybody from the film Imprint who took the time to be on this call. Thank you, Rob, even though you're not here live. Thank you anyways for agreeing to do the interview with me. And two things that I want to send you home with. Thing number one is, and this is the commercial break bit, so do excuse me. I want to mention that these films that I'm able to create through this funnel that I call Campfire Stories are possible only because I'm in a gift economy world. And so they're only possible because people sign on to say that they want to stand behind me in creating these films, and they sign up for something like $3 a month or more. But it's sort of priced to not exclude anybody, and for the future releases that are coming up this autumn, there's two of them coming up. I'm planning to do these release events, and anybody who is a Patreon member will automatically be invited to be on the live calls for these release events. So that's perhaps something for some of you to check out, joining as a Patreon supporter at $3 a month or $6 a month or another amount. Or joining the newsletter is also a good way to stay informed about what's going on at Campfire Stories. So that was the first. Okay, end of commercial break. Back to the show, and I'd like to now announce that if everything went well over at YouTube, the film Imprint should now have been released about 45 minutes ago. So I hope it did, and the link will be sent. Julie is sending the link to the film on YouTube. So you can go in the chat, and if you already feel like you've been on this call for 70 minutes, which you have, and don't want to watch a film that's also 70 minutes long, you can just bookmark the link for later. And I don't know what else. So that probably means I've come to the end of the session. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And cheers and bye-bye.